Hello and welcome to The Curators, a podcast about game projects on Kickstarter. I'm Joey.
And I'm Marcelo. You can find all the games from this episode as well as plenty of others at our curated page at kickstarter.com/gamerati.
You can also find links to each of these projects in the show notes of this episode at thecurators.gamerati.com. If you're a backer of any of these projects, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at thecurators@gamerati.com. Tell us why you're backing a certain project, and we may feature your email on the podcast.
All right. Today I'm talking about Ferman. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. I believe they have a pronunciation guide here somewhere. I'll check it out later. Ferman, Sultan's Decree. It's a game by Barely Functioning Studios. It's their first Kickstarter project. It's a worker placement Euro-style board game with... It's meant to be quick. It's not meant to be one of those 3-hour-long games. It's meant to be around 60, 90 minutes. This company is from Istanbul, Turkey, and the game takes place in Constantinople. I wish we could have the rights to that They Might Be Giant song right now.
I know. It's one of my favorites.
Okay, so in the game, it's a historic period game in which Constantinople has just been conquered. So it's now Istanbul, but the battles destroyed a lot of the city. So the Sultan has determined, Sultan has given a decree that is called a Ferman, that the wealthy merchants of the town, who am I kidding? Of the metropolis, have to help him bring the glory back to the town, rebuild the city. And in the meantime, why not get a little richer? So it's a game for 3 to 6 players. Each one controls one of the proeminent merchants of the town. And at the same time that you help rebuild districts, rebuild aqueducts, help the Sultan reestablish the city again as a jewel. The design is very, very beautiful, using a lot of the hints of the art of the period. You can see that in the map, in the cards, in the numbers, in the colors used. It comes with character tokens, resource tokens, a lot of resource cards, even coin tokens, and quest cards and Ferman cards. The quest cards are the stuff that you have repair some bridges or build a madrasa. So you have the amount of resources you have to spend, usually wood, stones, silk, and other resources. And as you complete it, you get gold. You get gold coins. Gold coins are the victory points. The first one who hits 11 gold coins wins the game. And there's also the Ferman cards. Throughout the game, the Sultan can have certain new decrees that change the rule of the game. New stuff you have to do, new ways you have to do stuff, or stuff you can't do anymore. So that changes the dynamic of the game. Also, because every player has only one action per turn, the game doesn't allow you to think too much in advance. You have to kind of work on your feet as you play the game. And let's see if it has the amount of time it takes to play. The rule book is available for download for free if you want to check the rules. It takes between 30 and 60 minutes to complete a match. So I don't remember ever seeing a resource management worker placement game so fast. Do you know it?
I mean, it's pretty quick. I know that once you really get into a specific worker placement game, you and a group of friends who've played it like 5 or 6 times can usually cut it down to 60 minutes, like just about any worker placement game. But that's after really knowing how to play. So I don't honestly know anything that can boast a 30 to 60 even. Gosh. I'm trying to think of some, and I'm drawing a blank, honestly. Most of them take well over an hour.
Yeah.
On their best days.
So the game is obviously Euro-friendly because they're from Istanbul. And it's also US friendly shipping. Shipping to Brazil is 25 euros.
That's actually not that bad. I mean, it is the cost of the game.
Yeah, but that's usual. I'm used to that.
Right. I'm trying to find like some cheaper locations, but like Poland is 18, Portugal is 16. Let's see, the Netherlands is 16, Latvia is 16. So a lot of Europe will actually be more expensive than the United States, probably just because the market share in the United States is so much higher. When someone generally says friendly shipping, it means it's able to get to your door much easier. That is to say, like for European shipping or for Australian shipping, if they say it's friendly, that means that the shipper or the client likely paid for the taxes and then will pass those taxes on to you in the form of the shipping cost or the cost of the game, rather than to basically ship you a game and then have the postal service demand that tax from you. A lot of people just really don't like that. They'd prefer their taxes be lumped into the initial price. But Americans usually don't have a huge tax on board games coming out of China right now, at least for now. There's some debate on whether or not it's going to be 10% or 25% or something like that, as we continue to negotiate with China. But for now, U.S. friendly shipping, if you see that on a Kickstarter, I get the feeling that means subsidized ship. Basically, the company is paying for cheaper shipping for the USA because, I mean, they know that as an American, we usually gather about 60% of the market share. 60% of all sales are going to happen in America at least. And for a 20 euro game, because the game is pretty cheap, $23, to have me spend another 20 euros or almost another $20 on the shipping alone is really hard to swallow. But it can be pretty cheap. And it looks like 12 euros isn't that bad, to be honest.
You can get the print and play version for 6 euros if you want. 6 euros is a little under $8. $7, actually. 7 US dollars. They still have a couple of early birds for the game for 20 euros or 23 US dollars. Otherwise, the game is the pledge for the base game is 25 or more.
Yeah, at the time of recording, there's 80 left. There's 80 left. So this is recorded on Thursday. You may still have some available by the time you listen to this.
And it's a small project. It's not very ambitious as some of the gigantic projects we've talked about in the past. And I think it's a good change of pace to see a smaller company with a very young, very interested team, very invested team in a game about their city. That's cool. That's very cool.
It is really cool.
Okay, so 15 days to go, 148 backers. They are halfway through their goal. Let's help those people make this game. Okay, that was my game. What about you, Joey?
My game is actually a sci-fi game this time. Usually Marcelo's the one that brings up the sci-fi games. It's Moonrakers. And it is not based on or has any affiliation to the James Bond movie Moonraker, but this is a game about spaceships. And it is also similarly about fulfilling orders, kind of like Ferman. The concept here is that you actually have like a deck of resources that you get from having a specific ship. So you get your ship, you get certain resources like a starting hand of cards, and you will spend those cards to fulfill certain missions that require a number of those cards. Your resources are yellow, green, and blue. The yellow is thrusters, the green is shields, the blue is, I want to say, reactors or energy. And I believe there may be another resource, like a chaos resource or something, it's purple, and I'm having a hard time finding it on the page. So you've got these different types of resources. You also actually can do damage, and sometimes you may have to in certain instances. You have these cards that you start with, kind of like a deck builder. You have a starting deck that is pretty okay. You can kind of do some stuff. But as you progress through the game, you get to add to your ship, and the adding of components to your ship changes your hand, changes your deck, actually. It's not a traditional deck builder in the sense of there are things on a tableau that you're purchasing from the cards in your hand already. Like you're purchasing other add-ons to your ship as a whole, and you think of your hand as the ship. So it's got, if you've got extra shielding, you will have more green resources. If you have extra, power, you'll have more blue resources. If you have extra thrust, you'll have more yellow. And if you can do more damage, you'll have extra orange, which is the damage resource. And then you go about basically fulfilling orders that require those specific resources. And oftentimes you won't be able to actually do them by yourself, or it would be unwise to do it by yourself because you'll be overextending all your resources. What you may want to do is actually negotiate. So in this game, there's a negotiation aspect where when the specific resource itself, or not resource, when the specific job tells you that you're going to, need a certain amount, but you're also going to get a certain amount of victory points, the victory point total is usually an odd number so that you can negotiate with your frenemies, I guess you could say, and that you guys will not have an equal share in victory if, say, victory is reached. So the game is over, I want to say, when you get like 10 victory points, but throughout the game you'll also be losing victory points in that some of the recipes that you're trying to, put together, they have hazard dice. And the greater the reward, the more hazard dice might actually show up. If you roll the hazard dice and you get a hazard symbol, you actually lose a victory point. And if you want to spend extra shields against those, you can reduce the amount of victory point loss. So the game has a lot of kind of avenues of play, really interesting mechanics, and I love specifically the deck building concept of how you're not buying cards specifically to alter your deck. Like you don't pick up the one card that you've been looking for. You only have a certain amount of cards that will be in your deck based on the components and ship parts that you have for building your specific ship. So your ship is going to look different from somebody else's. And that really, it actually makes me think a little bit like a more granular version of Mistborn House War, which was a game that we talked about a long time ago. And it had a negotiation aspect, and each player had different resources that they would get each turn. And so you had this like asymmetrical kind of play, but this one is a little bit more like granular in how you're building your character. Since your character is your ship, your resources, they're malleable, I guess, in where you're gonna get your resources from. They're not as static. They're not as you're not as reliable of a source of one specific resource as you might be from the beginning as a frenemy. So in Mistborn, you would have a lot of resources that you would start with. So this is kind of asymmetrical. One person would have different resources than I would, so I could rely on them for a specific type of resource, whereas in this game, your deck is changing based on the number of ship parts that you have and the type of ship parts that you have. So if you were at one point a reliable source of green resources, we may now be negotiating over different resources based on what my needs are, what your needs are, and what kind of contracts are on the table that we're trying to fulfill for victory points. And I think that that's a kind of an interesting way to do negotiation games, because not only is your negotiation power not necessarily dependent on your physical ability to negotiate, but your actual presence on the board and how well you are like making yourself valuable based on the number of and the type of resources that you're able to kind of change to need. And I think it's kind of cool, honestly, because a lot of negotiation games can kind of feel not super fair when you're playing them with someone who's really good at negotiation, because that's kind of a skill, not necessarily a board game skill, but a life skill. So it can kind of make it harder to play against someone who's a real smooth talker naturally. But like in a game like this where you're just making yourself more valuable, you get to hold a position of, look, I've got the only resource here that you need. You either play by my rules or you don't. I don't have to be a fast talker because I'm the big guy on campus. So I kind of like that concept. There's also other abilities in this game that I didn't really touch on. You can hire crew that give you added cards for your deck that give you special abilities to help you accomplish more contracts and get those figured out. There's a lot of other things going on in the box that I didn't really touch on, but I think the whole game, it actually just really comes together for something really, really cool. I highly recommend it. It's already funded well beyond its initial ask. They were asking for 40,000. They have 230,000 with 3,616 backers, 18 more days to go. This is absolutely going to fund. It's a $55 game for the base, $65 for the Kickstarter exclusive edition, which gets you an expansion. And let's take a look at the shipping. So an American would be into this game for an extra $14. What did I say? $65 for the Kickstarter edition plus 14? That's $79, $80 for this game. Pretty kind of a high ask if you ask me, because and I know that a lot of people aren't super into card games, spending that much money on card only games, but this does come with some dice. It comes with ship tokens that actually are your victory point trackers, and it will come with 40 metal coins representing other resources as well. So that's worth noting that it has some bling to it. The EU price is actually around $20, which is I want to say that's a pretty high estimate. If they end up charging this after the fact, it might even be cheaper than that. 20 seems a bit high to me for European shipping. But yeah, that's an estimate. They're actually not charging on the Kickstarter. They're probably going to charge on a backer kit. So you might see a little bit of a discount on that. That's just me spitballing. You never know. Logistics is a really weird business, and it is ever changing and always funky. It may turn out that, the United States warehouse actually ships to Mexico for far, far more expensive than the European warehouse would. So it's just going to be weird.
And that's the name of our episode.
If there's one thing I've learned from doing logistics, is that it is one of the weirdest businesses out there. It's just, it's so hard to explain to someone how shipping from Europe can be so much cheaper to Brazil than shipping from America. Europe has to send airplanes and stuff, and that's just, it's crazy to me that it would be so much, and it's a huge difference, but it's the way it is.
And there are subsidizes for some countries and added taxes to other countries. Maybe they're going through a trade war. Maybe they're negotiating a free zone. So that kind of stuff can change from week to week.
It really can.
All right, Joey. I think we have a show.
Yep, that's it for another episode of the show. If you have any questions about the games we featured, or if you'd like us to consider a game on the podcast, feel free to email us at thecurators@gamerati.com, and we'll answer you on the podcast.
You can also reach Joey and myself on Twitter and Facebook at Gamerati. The show notes for this episode and all our episodes are at thecurators.gamerati.com. You can also find The Curators on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. And I want to ask our listeners from the podcast version, give us a review. Whatever you take, wherever you get our show from Apple Podcasts, from Stitcher, from Google Podcasts, or I don't know if Spotify allows for reviews, but if it does, please give us one. It helps us be more visible when people are searching for specific shows.
And don't forget to check out our curated page at kickstarter.com/Gamerati, and we are also on YouTube at youtube.com/Gamerati.